How you doing? Welcome to the show. It's IB Nation Sports Talk solo to get things started, or as I like to call it when I'm by myself, the show starts on time. Ever notice that? Ever notice that? I know I've brought it up every now and then. Jesse will be along here in a little bit to do rapid fire with me. We're going to start with Notre Dame lacrosse coach Kevin Corrigan. Irish Gordian Nut saying hopefully Brian drops in. Not expecting Brian to drop in during this show. He was talking about maybe doing a short show of his own after dropping in over at Notre Dame this afternoon and checking out what's going on at camp over there. So I don't think that's going to happen on this show. But again, look for another one a little bit later this evening. Not too far off in the evening, but from what I understand, there will be one coming up anyway. So again, Jesse's going to be along for rapid fire after the Kevin Corrigan interview. I did talk to him yesterday afternoon, so this is a pre-recorded interview. You won't be able to, ask any questions or anything like that along the way, but pop some comments up and stuff like that if I see some stuff that we can. So Kevin Corrigan right now, rapid fire with Jesse coming up after that. To be joined by the head coach of the national champion, newly crowned national champion Notre Dame men's lacrosse team, Kevin Corrigan. How you doing today, Coach? Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. That sounds good. I like to say that.
I was going to say, I saw a big smile come across your face. How long you been back in town now? You went overseas after your championship.
Yeah, we left on the Thursday before the Final Four and got back Monday night at like 8 p.m. It was crazy.
Quite a whirlwind.
Yeah, almost 3 full weeks. Busy,
wow.
Crazy, but so much fun.
I bet. Well, a couple of weeks obviously removed now from winning the championship with kind of some time to absorb it. How does this feel now, kind of basking in the glow now with this first national championship?
It'll never get better than I think what it was those first few moments after the game, just to watch our guys. You talk about just unbridled joy, just completely beside themselves and not knowing how to express it. So running around like fools, each other. It was wonderful. And it's, but maybe the best part of the whole thing has just been kind of the coming out after the game and seeing how many of our alumni were there and hearing from so many of our alumni and family and friends and people who were there who were just so excited for the team and for our guys. And that was awesome. I mean, I feel like all the alumni from our program really felt like they were part of this, and it doesn't get better than that,
I can only imagine. Are there any particular moments? I get, such an exciting championship game, and we'll kind of get into some of it here in a minute, but just for you, are there any particular moments, I guess, that stand out now when you think back on it?
Gosh, I mean, there were great moments throughout the game. Some of the plays that our guys made, it's funny. I hadn't had a chance to watch either the semifinals or the finals until last night, and I watched the semifinals last night, and I had forgotten that we scored with 1 second left in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And you think about, in an overtime win, what a big play that is.
No kidding.
And so. Now there were so many plays made over the course of both games. It's hard to pick out one. And besides that, every time one is made, besides the overtime goal in the semis, every time a play is made, it just means what's the next situation we got to get ready for in the next couple seconds here. And so you're just so locked in, you're not really enjoying it, except that's why you do this, is to be in those moments. So you enjoy it that way,
Well, yeah, no kidding. And I mean, a year ago, you guys probably would have killed to, just be in the tournament. And, I remember we had John kind of coming down the stretch. You had a bit of a slow start to last season. You had that rough patch early on where you lost 3 in a row. One of those losses ends up being to the eventual national champion Maryland. You guys got hot at the end of the season, but sort of, I guess, somewhat notoriously, especially at that point, you end up being left out of the field. How much maybe did that situation sort of fuel your team to where it ended up going this year?
Well, I mean, listen, we got some guys back over the course of that season.
Right.
Jake Taylor did not play until the 1st of April last year. And Arden Cohen had got a high ankle sprain in the last practice before our first game, and was really on one leg through the first month of our season. And so when we started playing better and started winning was when we felt like we were kind of back to being a complete team and being the team we had a chance to be. So it was so disappointing to not have a chance to go forward with that team. And there's nothing, listen, as great as this year is, there's nothing that replaces that fixes that, in the sense that team existed for 1 year and it ended that way. And that's going to forever be disappointing for me, especially for the seniors on that team.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the same time, be lying to say that there wasn't a burr under the saddle of everybody on our team throughout this whole year, and I think that kind of constant motivation of just saying we are not going to leave any doubt about this year. We're not going to leave this in anybody else's hands. And so instead of complaining and whining about things, our guys held themselves accountable and held each other accountable for the things that we needed to do to make sure we weren't in that situation again. And I'm very proud of them for that.
But, in a college lacrosse season is so condensed. It doesn't leave much room, much margin for error, it seems like.
No question. I mean, we play all our games in the course of 2 months to qualify for that tournament. And, you're working year round for those 2 months.
So the championship game against Duke, the first half couldn't have gone much better for you. You guys just come out firing. It seemed like every time you turn around, there's another ball going into the net there. But then second half starts, they come out of the chute with the 6 goals in the third period. Was there ever a point where it, like, to you, where it felt like it might be slipping away from you?
Not slipping away. Certainly felt like we were making our job harder. But I never felt like it was slipping away, and I don't think our guys did either. There was no panic. There was no sense of desperation on our sideline. It was just simply, hey, they made some plays. We knew they were going to make some plays. That's not a shock. But we made a few plays, a few not so good plays to contribute, right? And let's just get back to making the simple plays, because we felt like we were the better team. And so again, our guys had great poise and confidence in those moments, and that was decisive.
Your goalie Liam Intamin obviously played a big part in that whole thing, right up there in goals against average in the nation, and for the season. Seemed like, especially early on, he really set the tone for you guys in that game.
He did all year long. Again, I watched that game last night, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Oh my gosh, it's easy to forget about because it didn't count one on the scoreboard, but it was all about Liam just stealing some goals from them over the course of the game. He did it all weekend. He did it all season. He thankfully was recognized as the best goalie in the country, because in my mind it wasn't even close.
Yeah, absolutely. And your leading scorer for the season, Pat Cavanaugh, famously now, I guess at this point, the hamstring injury. In that, just how bad was that hamstring that he had going into that game?
It was pretty bad. I mean, you ought to see the colors of his leg after the games. But boy, you talk about a tough kid. I mean, not that we didn't know it before that, but he left no doubt. He just was not going to even entertain the idea that he was not going to play in this game. He kind of felt like he'd been preparing his whole life to play in this game, and hamstring or no, he was going to find a way to play and contribute.
Well, and of course, the older of the Kavanaugh brothers, his brother Chris, as well, a sophomore for you this season. They're your 2 leading scorers. Just how much have they meant to your team this year?
Well, they mean so much. Obviously, their stats speak for themselves, but more importantly, yeah, there's statistics that normally you don't talk about with attackmen, like caused turnovers and ground balls. That where I would, I'll guarantee you, nobody in the country had more caused turnovers or more ground balls than Pat Cavanaugh from the attack position. And in my mind, he was the most valuable player in the country. Maybe only rivaled by Liam. But more than that is the fact that the way they compete is just contagious. You simply can't be on a field with a couple guys playing with that kind of toughness and tenacity and grit, and not be affected by it, and not kind of feel like you have to live up to that standard. That's the standard that existed for our whole team, not just for those guys. And I think that was really, really important for us.
He's talking about walking on to the football team now. What do you think? Can he do it?
He's full of soup.
Full of soup, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
got on that one.
You had a guy, Sam Asaf, who walked on both to the football team and to your lacrosse team as well. It's pretty crazy when you think about the schedule that you've got to keep up doing that, both football, especially as a walk-on, and keeping up with your academics as well. Have you ever had anyone do anything like that before?
We've had a lot of kids do that over the years, but we've never had one do that and maintain a 4.0 GPA, which Sam did as well. So yeah, he's a terrific kid, and was a great teammate, to our guys, as well as to the football players, I'm sure.
Yeah. You took your team to Germany. You talked about how long you'd been gone. You'd been gone for a total of 3 weeks, you said, before you finally got back on campus. You were over there for, I think, 10 days for some clinics. What was that whole experience like?
Well, we've taken 7 of these foreign tours now, and they're just, it's mostly just meant to be a great experience for our guys. It's really not, there's no other kind of big purpose to this, except that this is part of the 4-year experience we want our guys to have when they come here to play lacrosse. The lacrosse itself over there, not that good, but being kind of, it's to me, it's also sort of part about connecting with the bigger lacrosse community, right? And it gives our guys maybe a little bit of a sense of gratitude that they grew up where they did and had the opportunities that they did within the game and everything else. When they go over there and they see how hard guys have to work, when we were in Japan, we were talking to kids who had to take 3 trains to get to practice,
Wow.
and they did that every day, 5 days a week, and when we're in the Czech Republic, we played, we went to a box field to play, and guys were driving in from 2 and 3 hours away, is what they do to, just to play, and they do it on their own dime. The university's not picking up their travel or giving them equipment or anything else. And these guys are doing it because they love the game just like our guys do. So there's a lot of good things that come out of those trips. Gives us a chance to give back to some of the lacrosse community, but also gives us a chance to maybe have a sense of gratitude and humility about the opportunities that we have.
As you just described there, it's obviously different over there, just even in terms of you're a college program over here versus what they're doing over there. Did they really have a full comprehension or appreciation for what you guys just accomplished before you went over there?
They were more excited than we were when we got they had made the German group had made a banner for us, and they were so excited.
That's awesome.
For watching every guy you met were like, I watched every minute of the games, and it was really exciting, and it was really neat that they were so excited about our guys, winning, and the fact that they got to watch it is phenomenal, right?
Yeah, no kidding. That's pretty amazing to kind of hear that, to see how they really embraced you getting over there. This is, as you well know, you're 35 for you. 35 years ago, you and I, both had much darker hair than what we've got right now. If you could go back and tell that Kevin Corrigan one thing, that guy walking in the door, what would it be that you might tell him?
I got Sean. That's hard to say because I've learned so much over the years. The biggest thing probably, and I probably really learned this from my brothers about 15 years ago, who kind of grabbed me by the short hair and said, "What's the matter with you? Like you're miserable. You have this great job that you love." And you're miserable all the time because of losing a game or whatever, and you're missing something here. And if you're this miserable doing this, you need to really think about why you're doing it or doing something else. And it really made me realize, like, wow, really, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be, and certainly not who I want to project to our players that I am. I want to be hard on them. I think it's good for young people to have somebody who's demanding of them and
sure
expects a lot out of them and then holds them accountable for things that they say they're going to do and so forth. So I'm not apologizing for any of that, but I also want to make sure that there's some joy in this whole thing and that I'm reflecting that. I mean, look, and not that we're not running around singing Kumbaya and patting each other on the head all the time, but listen, let's do that. We do this because we love it. We do this because we're passionate about it, and let's show that every day, in the way that we act. And I think that young guy 35 years ago might have been just pushing a little too hard sometimes to not appreciate how important that is.
But at the same time, I mean, 35 years is a long time, and when you're driven like that, and this is the ultimate goal, again, if I had told you or someone had told you 35 years ago, you're going to win a championship, but it's going to take 35 years. What would you have thought if you heard that?
I never listen. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but like as focused as we are, and I have been from day one. I said from the time I got here, my goal was to win a national championship here. That was even when it wasn't realistic in terms of where we were as a program and the resources we had and all that. Even at that early stages when it wasn't realistic to do that, the first few years, that was the goal. That was always the goal. It was never not going to be the goal. But I also can tell you in complete honesty that I wouldn't have retired feeling I was a failure if we had not won a championship. It's about so many other things on an everyday basis that I wouldn't have felt that way. It's great to feel like, to a lot of people, this is like validation of why I did this all this years or something like that. But that's not how I feel about it at all, to be honest with you.
At the same time, lacrosse has been a big part. I mean, it's basically been a part of your whole life, right? Your dad, Gene, played lacrosse in college. You played lacrosse in college. Other members of it, your family have coached and played lacrosse. Does that make it sort of even feel that, that much more special, I guess, now?
No question about that. It's funny. I had a conversation with one of my brothers this morning, Sean, and he said to me, I wish you could have seen all the different people from our family who were there, cousins and aunts and uncles and nephews and just all these people who were there, and just how excited they were, to see us get that win. So listen, that's the stuff that makes it all worthwhile. Like I said, sharing this with our family and friends and alumni from 35 years, that's been without question the best part of this whole experience.
Awesome. I meant to ask you, again, you've made that jump across the pond and back now. Which side of the jet lag is worse, going over or coming back? When did you feel it more?
Man, I tend to feel it coming back for whatever reason, but because going over, you just kind of power through that first day, and then you're kind of
collapse.
Yeah, as long as you schedule something to get you out of bed every morning over there, you're okay, right? And
true.
But coming back, I've felt like, and it probably doesn't help that I've not eaten very well for the last 3 weeks being on the road. It's always make the mistake of trying to eat every time our team eats, and that doesn't go well. those guys have a little bit different metabolism than I do. So
Seriously, right. All right, Kevin Corrigan, I appreciate you taking some time with us today. Congratulations once again. Glad to have you back, and congratulations on your first national championship.
John, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, so Kevin Corrigan, a little across there for you, and we've been waiting, trying to get him on for a little bit, but again, they were over there in Germany for 10 days after winning that championship, so we had to wait a little bit to have him on. Glad we were able to catch up with him. Derek, I apologize, not nuanced enough in lacrosse to ask about the face-offs, I guess. So I'll have to get a slap on the wrist for that. You're welcome. We are not Marshall. Just that was I think that was a fun experience. Obviously, it was a fun experience for him, but fun experience for a lot of people seeing that national championship and watching them win that national championship. And as he said, his family as well. It's a lacrosse family, deep running lacrosse family that he has. So with that, it's time to bring in Jesse, and you know what that means. So, Jesse, I've got one thing to ask you, of course. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I've been thinking about rapid fire all day, so I think we should get started.
I'm glad it's occupied a good place in your brain today. So maybe it's because the weather is getting a little bit better outside. I can see a little sunshine out your window, and we've got it out ours here today. Fill in the blank on this first one. After Notre Dame went 9-4 last season, and of course that includes a bowl win, the 9, with Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner at quarterback, it's blank that their current Las Vegas over-under win total for the season is 8.5.
It's outrageous that the Vegas over-under has the win total for this season at 8.5, especially if you're considering a potential bowl matchup as well. And I'll tell you why, because Notre Dame has gotten better, in my opinion, every aspect or every facet of the game or of their game. So, on offense, they're seeing an upgrade, obviously, at quarterback in Sam Hartman, someone who is far more experienced and has more skill than Pine and Tyler Buckner. And then you look at the weapons around him, I think you're going to see an obvious upgrade at the wide receiver position in terms of production. The running back room is with Estime and company is going to be, I think, if not the same, a little bit better this season because Sam Hartman is going to naturally improve the run game with a bigger threat in the pass game. The offensive line, I think, is still going to be very well. And then we flip over to the defensive side of the ball. I think the defensive line is going to have a ton of depth this season. The linebackers are going to have more experience playing in a defense, a second year under Al Golden. And then the secondary is going to be another bright spot for the team. So I think they get better at every position. I don't think they regress at any position. And the most important position, obviously, quarterback, they're taking a big step. So I just find it outrageous. There's no way, in my opinion, unless something goes wrong, that win total should be at 8.5.
See, and the quarterback thing is why you would expect this would at least a bump up to like 9.5 this year instead of 8.5. Because again, you're going from Drew Pine, the majority of the season, Tyler Buckner, 3 games of the season, beginning and end. They went 8-4 during the regular season. So we should actually, just drop off number 9 because the 8.5 only pertains to the 12 games during the regular season, not the bowl game. So, technically, if you're Vegas, they were 8-4. So, what they're saying is, are they going to have the same record or worse? Or are they going to be one win better? And, just like last year, it should come down to 3 games. They won one of the 3 games.
Pretty equal as well.
That's exactly right. They won one of the 3 last year. And the 3, of course, being, the Clemson that they won. They lost USC. They lost Ohio State. 2 close games. So to me, because again, I know everyone wants to yell Notre Dame bias and, all that kind of stuff. But this is Las Vegas. Like the Vegas guy, like the lines don't have bias because their only mission in Vegas is what? To make money on both sides of the line, right? So to me, when you look at the massive upgrade you're going to have at quarterback with Sam Hartman this year and all the other stuff that you outlined there, this has to have more to do with Vegas questioning Marcus Freeman as a head coach, I think. Wouldn't you? Because
basing it off
it
of that
boils
8.5.
down to they lost to Marshall and Stanford last year. And so it seems like Vegas has questions about, is Marcus Freeman the kind of head coach that can win the games that he's supposed to win?
And I agree with that, because I do think that it comes down to, is Marcus Freeman going to take the step as a head coach? Is he going to eliminate the games that he shouldn't that he lost last year that he shouldn't lose again this year? So obviously, being Marshall and Stanford, is he going to have repeat mulligans this year? Is he going to lose to one or two potential teams
Right.
that he shouldn't lose to?
Yeah, exactly. Is he going to slip up again? Again, massive slip up. I think even more so Stanford than Marshall. You can forgive maybe Marshall, a little bit game 2, still breaking in a quarterback, all that stuff, even though Marshall did not turn out to be good. They obviously, they peaked with Notre Dame. Let's put it that way. It didn't last very long. Everyone was like, ooh, high on Marshall now after that win over Notre Dame. Didn't last long. That was a horrible win, or a horrible loss. Stanford was a horrible loss. When I was saying you can kind of forgive Stanford maybe a little bit more, it's like you get one of those early in the season, but then Stanford, man, that's where, again, like you thought you had the corner turned. Really, though, when you look at how the season ended, even though they didn't play as well as they could have against USC, it was still a quality opponent. They beat a solid, fairly evenly matched SEC opponent in South Carolina. So they were at least trending in the right direction. But I just, again, 8.5 when you've got the quarterback with the most touchdown passes and wins in college football on your team this season, it seems like this has to have more to do with who the head coach is than who the quarterback is, or anyone out there on the field this season. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame has discontinued its long-running inter-hall tackle football program due to declining numbers and a high number of participants who had no prior organized tackle football experience before playing in the inter-hall league.
To me, it's lame that Notre Dame is discontinuing the inter-hall tackle football program. And I think that it can't really, it's lame that they're canceling it, but I don't necessarily know what they can do when you have declining numbers. And, obviously students who have never played prior tackle football before. But I think that is what drew a lot of these people in, is, you're at a university where football is considered its top sport, its top program. And I think a lot of people are like, hey, I've never played football before, but they might know a lot about football, or maybe were not, what's the word, maybe a little timid, a little scared, because, obviously Notre Dame is a high academic institution. And so you have a lot of people who maybe didn't focus a lot of their time in high school to playing, sports or tackle football, or maybe they played, soccer, cross country, baseball, whatever it might be. And so, you can't really control what the enrollment gives you, but I think it's just lame because the program and the teams have been around for so long at Notre Dame. It's a long standing tradition that goes on at the university. So it sucks that it potentially has to come to an end, because I feel like it's just one of those, like many things at Notre Dame, is a big tradition thing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It really stinks because, like, I remember, moving here 20 plus years ago, and it's like, wow, Notre Dame, like, not only do they have an intramural program, they have a tackle football program.
Yeah. Most places it's just going to be flag football.
Yeah, exactly. And that is actually kind of what it sounds like is replacing it, because you've got overall numbers dropped. 6 years ago, they had 370 participants to this year. Apparently they had 269. So it's dropped by about 100 in a 6-year stretch. And there's 17, I think, male residence halls over at Notre Dame, so like when you do the math on that, if you've got 269 overall, and you've got, that would give you around, if you're going to have 30 players per team, that's about 9 teams that you could field. So that's almost half the resident, so they're already probably were combining residence halls. Whereas, in the past, each residence hall probably had its own team. But again, when you look at almost half of the people who were playing had never played organized tackle football before. I mean, that's, like you grew up playing tackle football. So this was a problem you never had, but like trying to ensure safety, I would think, has got to be a bit of an issue when you've got that many people who have never played any level of tackle football before. And, let's be honest, it's much easier for someone who hasn't played football to play on a flag team, just like it's easier for someone who hasn't played baseball before to play on a beer league softball team. It's like, they're similar sports, but they're different. There's no contact, really in flag football. And that seems to be where the numbers are going. A 42% increase in flag football participation, while you've got a declining number in the tackle side.
30% is what I came up with in my head.
Yeah. So, I mean, it stinks because of the long running tradition, how long this has been around. But, I think these numbers also kind of mimic what's going on really across the country as well. You've got fewer people, fewer guys playing tackle football in high schools as well. The numbers there are dwindling as all, stuff comes out about concussions and, just the risk of different injuries and, all these different things. So it stinks because it had been a tradition at Notre Dame for so long. Maybe they'll miss it in a few years and someone will try to bring it back. But it's, and I remember like when we'd be over there, doing like media, like in October, we'd be interviewing players and stuff like that. And you'd see some of the guys out there with their full pads and football pants carrying their helmets, back after practice and stuff like that. It's like misting in October in South Bend. That was just always kind of cool to see those guys. It stinks we won't be able to see that anymore. So the ACC and the Big Ten are ditching divisions this year. Do you buy or sell? It will make those conferences more interesting.
That's a big buy for me because when you separate conferences into divisions, ultimately the divisions, it's basically two conferences within the same conference because the divisions really ultimately play only their divisions. There might be like a game or two crossover, and then obviously you'll play each other in the Big Ten or ACC championship, depending on who comes out of each division. And so why I like that is I think you get more diversity in the schedule and you get teams playing each other that haven't really been playing each other as much over the years. Like you'll see, it's just not going to be the same Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan all playing each other out for the bloody side of the East,
right,
and compared to a weaker West. And then ultimately you're going to see a better Big Ten championship game overall because it no longer just does the team on the West get an automatic bid into the championship. And so I just think it makes for a better schedule overall. You're going to see more teams play each other within the conference, and then I think it ultimately will yield a better conference championship as well, because you're not just giving a spot to a team that played in the weaker side of the conference, and that's ultimately what the Big Ten comes down to. I mean, look at the Big Ten championship the last couple of years, and watching Michigan wax whoever came out of the West, and that's a predominant pattern through the Big Ten over the years. Is typically the East stomps the West, and the West has no reason belonging in the Big Ten championship.
And that's obviously the ultimate goal of this whole thing, is to get better matchups in the conference championship game. So like you might get Ohio State versus Michigan twice, or Penn State might
no longer is Northwestern or Iowa sneaking in there.
Exactly. And that's for those schools, it ultimately the entire season might not be as interesting, but at least, like you said, the consolation prize is at least the schedule is going to be a little bit fresher. You're going to start to see some different teams on a more regular basis. I think it's like every 4 years is supposed to, you're supposed to play, I think, every team a home and home in every 4-year period, so, like for the ACC, for both of them, really, their goal was to get the two best teams in the conference championship game. And that also gives them the best chance to get multiple teams in the college football playoff, especially now that the playoff is going to be expanding next year, so that'll help. But like for the immediate future, again, it's like Ohio State, Michigan, the race is basically going to be, can anyone knock one of those two teams
I was going to say,
out of the
so
conference championship
do you think
game?
that with the with the playoff expanding, I don't think this is going to be too big of an issue, but if we had this current, Big Ten no longer divisions 5 years ago, do you think that it would penalize someone like Michigan, Ohio State? Say, Michigan beats them in the regular season and then goes on to beat them again in the championship. Now you have 2 losses to the same team. Would that have penalized them? You know what I mean? Because you have 2 losses technically, but it's to the same opponent who ultimately is also going to the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good point. You're going to have probably more of that, or that, at best case scenario, you're going to split. Well, not best case. Best case is you go 2-0 if you're one of those 2 teams. But, for like the chances of your conference, I guess, best case is you're going to split. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If it were around 5 years ago, it definitely would have hurt one of the, like one of those 2 teams.
So I wonder if that plays a part of it in the playoff expansion. Are they more comfortable with it because knowing that, what is it? Is it a 12-team format?
But it's going to, you're going to have at-large bids anyway. I think it's the 6 conference champions are guaranteed spots, and then the rest are going to at-large bids. So I think if you have to play a team twice, then the question is going to be like, did you split? If you go 0-2, obviously, if you lose another game beyond those, you're not making you're not going to make a good case for yourself. But how close and how competitive were those 2 games? But I think that you're definitely still going to be in the conversation, even if you lose 2 games, as potentially being like the 11 or 12 seed kind of thing. The ACC, they just want to get some kind of good game.
Yeah, the ACC is even more lopsided than the Big Ten most of the time. The only time it was pretty fair is when Notre Dame joined the conference for a year.
Exactly. And that was, they went with that system that year. And that's, you got Clemson or Notre Dame playing in the conference championship game. And really it wasn't the best conference championship game, but in terms of the way that season played out, it was probably, even though it was played COVID conditions and all that different kind of stuff, it's probably the best, one of the better regular seasons the ACC's had in a while because they had Notre Dame in there.
Right.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because it's basically been, you could pretty much all but guarantee Clemson was going to, end up winning their division, and then who was going to come out of the other division to play him. I think it's definitely going to be much more competitive for those 2 spots in the ACC than it probably is in the Big Ten. Because, again, Big Ten, it's like the season's going to start with Michigan and Ohio State, and then can Penn State beat one of them? Can Iowa, like Wisconsin, can one of these other teams end up sneaking in there and knock one of them out? Speaking of conferences and schedules and all that kind of stuff, the SEC released its 2024 football, not their schedule, but their opponents. Here's what Texas and Oklahoma's first slates are going to look like in their first season in the SEC next year, of course, 2024. Texas is going to have Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and Mississippi State at home. They're going to be at Arkansas, at Texas A&M, at Vanderbilt, and, of course, a neutral site game with Oklahoma. As for Oklahoma, they get the neutral site game with Texas. They'll also play Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee at home. They will travel to Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri. What do you think of those 2 schedules? Welcome to the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma.
That's kind of exactly my answer. What I think of these schedules are, welcome to the SEC. This is what you asked for. Are you going to sink or swim in this first season? Because you look at both of these schedules. I mean, Texas has Florida, Georgia. I want to assume Texas A&M will be in a better place by 2024. Mississippi State is always, a pretty solid team. Arkansas is no pushover these days. I mean, I guess you could say the weaker. I mean, Kentucky too. Kentucky's not a pushover, and it's Texas and Oklahoma obviously is a long-standing rivalry. I mean, if you look at that, to me, Vanderbilt and Kentucky are the games I guess you're most looking forward to. But even those, I'm not like, wow, these are pushovers. I mean, this is a tough schedule, and it is way Way different than the Big 12, I have to say. And then you go on to, Oklahoma, and it's like you got Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, all really hard teams. South Carolina was good last year. Missouri is the only team on that schedule where I'd be like, oh, okay, I feel pretty good about this one. But I just feel like both of these teams are quickly going to realize that maybe they bit off a little bit more than they can chew. And I know it's not the program itself. It's the universities wanting to, make the change. But I think it's going to be a rough transition with these first year SEC schedules, because looking at both of those, majority of those opponents are tough, and they are not going to be it is just not going to be what it was like in the Big 12.
I saw Brian Curtis from The Ringer tweet this last night when he saw it, and this is a great point. Texas, like Penn State, we talked last week when we predicted the Penn State, what Penn State is going to do this season. They've been in the Big Ten for 30 years, and they are the only team in the Big Ten that did not protect a game. Like, they have no protected rivalry games, as the Big Ten goes to its new format next year. So they've been out there for, 30 years, no rivalries they've developed, to speak of, I guess, that they want to keep around anyway in the Big Ten. And that's typically what happens. Like you switch conferences, whatever, and you say goodbye to some of your rivals, just like Missouri said goodbye to Kansas and Kansas State. And of course, Texas A&M said goodbye to Texas in some of those schools. Texas is the opposite. They're going to get to play Arkansas and Texas A&M, which are two old traditional rivalries from them, like going back to the Southwestern Conference days. They're actually going to get to reunite with some old rivals by changing conferences. That doesn't happen very often, that you change conferences and you actually get to face
new
more
rivals.
Yeah, you get to face, like those old rivals as a result.
I forgot about how much that Texas and Arkansas matchup used to be back in the day.
Yeah, back in the Darrell Royal days. And yeah, that's exactly right. And, the other interesting thing, of course, is how the SEC, subtly, maybe not so subtly, Texas is going to play Georgia. Oklahoma is going to play Alabama.
Yeah,
I mean, you
split. It's like they kind of went, they had like a draft. Okay, you get this one, you get this one, you get this one, you get this one.
That's right. Here's Alabama's schedule. They're going to play Auburn, Georgia, Missouri, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. I don't think Nick Saban's probably very happy about that schedule.
Well, I mean, you saw everything that came out, I think, last week, right? Like the SEC basically dumbed down their schedule by a game. They allowed
by not playing 9 games. That's right.
Right.
They're keeping this 8-game format. So
I just think that stinks, by the way. I don't know if you talked about that prior, but that just stinks to me because, you already have the SEC already has an FCS opponent every year that they just wax, right? And so when you take off another SEC opponent, to me, that feels like now you have 2 games that are really just track meets for you. You're just putting them on the schedule and guaranteeing yourself a win.
School's looking at this because, here's what Georgia's going to play next year. Auburn, Florida, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Texas. And this is the 8-game schedule. So there are no coaches who are going to get these 8-game schedules and go, yeah, we need to go to 9 games, after this. They're just not going to do it. Tennessee gets Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Georgia, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. So Tennessee has to play both Alabama and Georgia next season, and then Oklahoma and
Does Tennessee
Florida
get LSU as well? Because that would be
no LSU.
No LSU. If any SEC team has Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, that triangle of opponents, I feel bad for you.
Here's LSU's schedule: Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. Those are the home games. At Arkansas, at Florida, at South Carolina, at Texas A&M. I mean, that's not an easy schedule either. I'm sure you look across that conference, and there are not going to be too many easy slates in the SEC. And again, that's why
every year
nobody wants to go to 9.
Saban and Kirby Smart make it look pretty easy, but it is not easy.
Nope, not at all. Let's see how easy this is as we pick another team's record for the upcoming season. It's Oregon today. They've got a Vegas over-under of 9.5 wins this season. Seems like every team we do has an over-under of 9.5. But here we go. So here's their schedule. Portland State, Texas Tech, Hawaii, Colorado. Those are all home games, by the way. 4 home games in a row against that slate for Oregon to start off. At Stanford, at Washington, Washington State, at Utah. So they play 3 of 4 on the road. Then they go Cal, USC, at Arizona State, Oregon State. So over under 9.5 wins for Oregon this season.
First, before we get in this, I just want to make the comment. I would love to be, who I don't know how Oregon did it, but I would love to have 8 home games and 4 road games in one season. I feel like that's
Seriously.
like a very distinct advantage right off the bat.
Let me see if I can find this real quick. Make sure. Go ahead.
But if we're looking at, the way I like to do these with you is I like to go opponent by opponent.
Sure.
And then we just kind of, say what we think win or loss. I think it's pretty Portland State, first and foremost, is an easy one. That's a win right off the bat.
That's a win.
Texas Tech I have as a win.
It's a win.
Hawaii I have as a win.
It's a win.
Colorado I have as a win. So we're started, 4 home games, 4 wins, and then you go at Stanford. That's a win for me as well.
I think so too.
And then I think they pick up their first loss in their first true road match at Washington.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the question is
evenly matched teams,
right? Between Oregon and Washington, one of those 2 teams is going to come out, at least 10 wins, and the other is going to.
I think it'll largely due to that game.
Right, exactly. And I'm looking here. Actually, I was mistaken. They go to Texas Tech, so they don't start off with 4 at home. They go to Texas Tech.
Okay.
Let me make sure everything else matches up. So it's only
still 7 and 5. It's
Tech
not
game.
6 and 6. They still get one more extra home game compared to road games. So
right.
All right. So at Washington is a loss. So at this point, I have them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
and they
6,
lost,
5
they
and
lost
1.
that one by a field goal last year, by the way.
Okay. At home, I'm assuming, too.
At home. Yeah, that's right.
So Washington State, I have them recovering and beating them.
Go win.
Utah is a toss-up, and I'll explain later.
Yeah, that was a close one. They won that one by a field goal last year. So you want to save that for the end?
Yes, that's a win or loss for me.
Right.
Cal is a definite win.
W.
USC is a definite loss.
Agree.
And then at Arizona State is a definite win.
Yeah. Arizona State, by the way, with an over-under of 4.5 for the Fighting Drew Pines. So,
And then Oregon State is another toss-up to me. So this is where so they definitely have 2 losses, and they are definitely at 8 wins. They're at 8 and 2. And I think between Utah and Oregon State, they split those 2. That's why I wanted to hold it till the end. And so I don't think they win both of those. I don't think they lose both of those. They split and go 9 and 3. So my 9.5 wins. I'm gonna have to take the under because I think they split between Oregon State and Utah.
I agree with that. I like the way that you break it all down like that because I absolutely agree. I think that those 2 are probably toss-ups, and based on what we have so far, like they didn't have to play USC last year. Remember they got blown out by Georgia to start the season, but then they ripped off 8 straight wins. Their best win in that stretch was over UCLA, which had made it to the top 10 at that point, but then they lose to Washington, they lose to Oregon State, lost 2 of their last 3 at the end of the regular season. Utah, though, was one of the wins. And I just think because the Pac-12 it's like they've got the teams that are going to make them the most money, and they've got them all playing each other this year. They've got Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Utah basically all playing each other this year. And I just don't think there's any way that a team like Oregon is going to be able to survive a gauntlet like that. And I agree. I think that they end up 9 and 3 this season.
Very nice.
Yep.
Some might say great minds think alike.
That's right. All right. Last question tonight. Oakland A's fans staged a protest during the A's home game at the Coliseum this week. They stood silent for the first batter of the fifth inning, and then they broke into a chant of "Sell the team" that was so loud. The Oakland pitcher, they've got like he had to call timeout because he couldn't hear the pitch call they were trying to call through his earpiece. He wasn't sure if the earpiece was broken. It was so loud. So this is part of the fan base's 11th hour attempt to keep the A's from moving to Vegas. What do you think about what's going on out there in Oakland right now?
So here's the situation with what I got with my feelings in Oakland. Back in the day, and this is from my understanding, I've been listening. I watched a lot of baseball games, and a lot of broadcasters, especially this past week, have been talking about what's going on in Oakland, and specifically, I watch a lot of Cubs games. So Marquee Network is Boog Sciambi. And recently, they've been doing a lot of Joe Torre. He's actually been on the Marquee Network a lot, and he's been doing games with Boog Sciambi. And Boog was asking him, back in the day, what was your experience with, playing in Oakland? Is it comparable to what's going on now? And he basically said, I used to love playing back in the day in Oakland. It was one of my favorite places to go. The fans were always supportive, et cetera, et cetera. I think what's going on there is a complicated situation. I think that the fan base itself has declined, and I understand wanting to move. I think also ownership and management has let that stadium crumble to something that is not playable, and I think that's a disservice to the fans. So I think both of those kind of go against each other, and I ultimately feel bad for the fans too, because this is now two sports franchises that are going to be leaving, the first being the Golden State Warriors and now the Oakland A's. But at the same time, I don't feel bad because Oakland has proven that is no longer a market that professional sports teams can sustain. And when you're in the business of running a professional sports team, you're going to move your nice new stadium to a place that is going to generate a lot more money, and the fans are going to come no matter what. And that's not proven in Oakland. And so while it sucks for the fans, it's a business. And I think in a business term, it makes a lot more sense to build a brand new nice stadium in Vegas, because look at all these new stadiums that are going up in Vegas and doing well. The Raiders' new stadium, the Golden Knights, the hockey,
right?
That just won the Stanley Cup. I mean, everything is shown that it is proven to work in Vegas. And, no matter how vanilla it is and how basic and easy it is to say, hey, we're just going to drop another team in Vegas, it's working. The business model is working.
It's a popular market for a reason.
Exactly. Yep. It sucks for the fans. But if you were really concerned the last 30 years, you wouldn't have let it get to this situation, I think.
Well, but at the same time, I still think there's more on not even the ownership. It's run like a bargain basement team, but it's a small market. Like they dropped radio broadcasts, I think, for a little bit a few years ago, or they tried to anyway. It's like it's a very tough market to be in, but the biggest issue from an ownership standpoint is the stadium. And they've been trying for years to get a new stadium out there in Oakland, but they can't get the public funds, like the tax money. They're not able to get any of that, no matter how much they've tried. They've looked at different parts, like going south down toward San Jose and that area, but they're going to get the public funds in Las Vegas. It's what it's going to come down to. They're not going to get as much public funds in Vegas as they thought they were going to get, but they're going to get it. And if you can get over $350 million, I think it is, in public money to move to another city, rather than have to shell out potentially $1 billion on your own as an ownership group, of course you're going to do it. There's some fan apathy, I'm sure, but I think the biggest issue facing Oakland is just that they've wanted for years and years and years to get some help to build a new stadium, and they've just never been able to get the help to do it. And so what other choice do you have? Because of what you said, it's like Las Vegas is prospering right now with pro sports cities, and that's it. It just really doesn't seem like there's another option for the A's if they want to stay alive.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think if the team wants to, not essentially die out, they got to find a spot where they can prosper and grow. Essentially, they can't keep declining or staying at the rate that they're at. And I think no matter what in Vegas, they know people are always in Vegas. Even if you're not an A's fan, people are going to come just as tourists. People are going to use it as business opportunities to take clients. There's just so many more opportunities to go to a baseball game in Vegas than there is in Oakland. And I think that's ultimately the driving factor.
And again, it's a endless catch-22, like from the ownership standpoint, because if the owners, I talked about their bargain basement, and we all know about Billy Beane and, the origins of Moneyball and all that kind of stuff. But like, if you have a stadium with better luxury suites and amenities and all those different kind of things, you have more money. And theoretically, then, if you're generating more money from those kind of things, the corporate dollars and all that kind of stuff, then you're able to actually go out and spend more money. They can't do it in Oakland. The hope, obviously, from their perspective, is that they can do it in Las Vegas. It just sucks from a fan standpoint, because it's not just the Raiders and the A's that they've lost. The Warriors only moved across the bay, but they're in San Francisco now. They used to be right there as well.
They've lost all three, and it's very unfortunate for the fans. But I mean, like we all know, last night I was watching it. Again, Bugshiambi, Joe Torre just brought up a good point. No matter the players and personnel, yes, it's a game to them, and they take the game very seriously. But the game is produced to a market. It's a business. And that's why they had to make all these rule changes, is because you can play the game, but if no one is watching, then what does it matter? If no one's coming to games and it's not exciting, what does it matter? And so that's why you saw a lot of these rule changes. And that's ultimately what's going to take the A's from Oakland to Vegas. It's a business, and you got to be able to generate revenue.
Just good stuff tonight. Enjoy your night. We will talk to you tomorrow when Vince and you and I are all in here. Thanks for joining us this evening. Hit the like button on your way out. And, of course, you know what to do. Subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks to Notre Dame men's lacrosse coach Kevin Corrigan, who joined us earlier to talk national championship. Don't forget Micah Shrewsbury coming up next week. But if you didn't hear Coach Corrigan tonight, you can find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And of course, Neil Ivey was on with us last week as well, and you can find that there as well. Jess, talk to you tomorrow. Aviation Sports Talk.